We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230, KGEO, 1410, KERI, now in Albuquerque, New Mexico at 1000 KKIM, and now on the Internet 3 times a week nationwide on knookmedia.com. So, Clay, what do you think of Marcus Johnson?
Oh, I like Marcus. I've always liked Marcus.
Yeah, I'm very, he's a good entrepreneur. Good for the community. I mean, I just like Marcus.
And he treats his people well. That's what's important. That's why they keep coming back to work for him.
Yeah, which is true. Well, our second guest is an old friend of mine. I'm trying to think of how long I've known her, probably close to 30 years. Someone we had on the show a couple years ago. She's a counselor, therapist, and an author, Elizabeth Skoglund. Elizabeth, welcome back to Taking Care of Business.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we should have had you back sooner, but it's just one of those things. I guess it's been close to 4 years since the last time we had you on the show.
Yeah, I think it's been about that, yeah.
Boy.
I can't remember what book it was, but...
Yeah,
Have we been in business that long?
Yeah, can you believe that? A little over 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. How many books have you written, speaking of your books?
I think it's about 43. I know it's over 40.
43 books. That's incredible.
Maybe 42, maybe 44. I'm not sure. I just finished one now that I've got to edit and put out. It's called Finishing Well. It's a scary title.
Well, what's the title?
Finishing Well.
Finishing Well. I like that. Okay.
That's something Billy Graham wrote, something similar to that too, I think.
Yeah, I think he did. It came out after I started doing this one, but this book is more about it's autobiographical or biographical.
Oh, great!
It's like it starts out with people like Stanley and Livingston. Mm-hmm. Livingston died, with a candle burning on his knees by his bed in Africa with 3 people that he wasn't close to nearby.
This is kind of a side thing, but if I remember right, everybody knows the story of Stanley and Livingston.
Right.
Wasn't the only person Stanley saved was Livingston? Or it's the other way around. The only person Livingston saved was Stanley.
You mean like converted?
Converted.
Oh, no. No.
No? Okay.
Livingston said very bluntly when he started this whole thing, he said, I won't be the kind of missionary that wins a lot of people to Christ. Because he went in because he knew that there had not been a mission or a business that could survive in Africa over 100 miles from the coast, mm-hmm. because of tribal activity and also because of disease. And so he decided he would map out this whole problem and show where companies and missionaries could go in and be less, liable to be killed
mm-hmm.
or something. And so that was his life goal. But of course, he preached as he did it.
Mm-hmm.
And he often won people that were heads of the tribes to Christ. And then, kind of in an almost amazing way, that they would give an order to the whole tribe to become a Christian.
Wow.
And you don't know, how much that stuck, but that was his approach. And then Stanley, though, was competitive with the, I can't remember the name of it, Geographical Society, I think, in London.
In London, yeah.
Where they couldn't find Livingston. Nobody could find Livingston. This is after a few years when he was there. And so this became almost like a race. And forever afterwards, Stanley was hated for that because he's the one that quietly went in there and found him.
Wow!
And it's a very, very interesting story. And there are a couple of good books out right now that are current on Stanley. And I'm trying to think of them. One is Blood River is interesting in the locality of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the book by his last name is Geal, Jeal. And he's written, I think, an incredible book on the whole scope of it. Mm-hmm. And you do see it, because during this time you had a lot of problems with the King Leopold.
Right.
And he was butchering people, and then these two men would get, Stanley mainly, would get blamed for stuff that he wasn't doing, or he was ignorant of. He didn't know that this man was doing all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a large area. You didn't know what the next guy was doing.
Sure.
And so it's interesting to look at this and to really get a honest scope of it, not just to, look at the first headline you see and say, oh, yeah, Stanley was involved with Leopold.
Sure.
Well, Stanley was a pretty incredible man. His end wasn't as dramatic, but he was the one that found Livingston, and without that, we would never have had Livingston's papers, because he took them back to London right away.
Ah, okay. We're having a conversation with counselor, therapist, author Elizabeth Skoglund. Elizabeth, I want to go back to a book that you wrote years ago that I was involved in a little bit with, and that's Life on the Line, which I thought was an incredible book. In fact, Billy Graham's wife did one of the forwards in the book, didn't she? Yeah, Ruth Graham did. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's kind of appropriate this week because, and recently we've been talking a little bit about the POW movement and everything, and there was a congressional thing a couple of years ago where they talked about anywhere from 10 to 20,000 American soldiers were left in Russia after World War II. And this week, and actually I think it happened, we're taping on Wednesday, it's happening today, Raoul Wallenberg, who you talk about in Life on the Line, is being honored today in Congress. He's getting a congressional gold medal, Yeah,
I didn't know that. I'm so glad.
Yeah, it's very appropriate. Tell us a little bit about Wallenberg's story and how it applies to Life on the Line.
Well, Wallenberg was one of the great men that went in and saved a lot of Jews. But his story is only in its totality if you connect it with Per Anker and with the legation that was in Budapest at that time. There were about 6 people in the embassy.
In this is during World War II in the Hungarian embassy.
Yeah, and we're talking kind of toward the end of the war. And so Per Anker was a diplomat, just a regular diplomat. And he was sent to join the ambassador in Hungary. And he was his attaché, and then there were about 3 other people. 3 women that were very, very bright and did a lot of help. But they needed help. And so President Roosevelt tabled the King of Sweden and said, can you send a person to help them in Budapest? And the Wallenberg family and actually Per Anker's family were 2 major families in Sweden. The Wallenberg family, part of the huge banking enterprise. And so actually that's when Wallenberg heard about this and volunteered and wanted to go. And ironically, he and Per Anker had been boyhood friends. They were both about, I can't remember if they were 32 or 33 when this happened. So he went to to Budapest, and they really plotted this thing. For example, when Eichmann was sent to do the final killing of everybody that was Jewish.
In Hungary?
In Hungary. Hitler thought that Hungary would come around and help him. And Hungary never did totally. Now, there's a lot of anti-Semitism in Hungary, but they never wanted to help Hitler. And so at that point, he turned on them, and he started to come in and butcher, Jews particularly.
Yeah,
at that point...
This is 1944. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so at that point, you have Wallenberg going with Per and Per Anker. Excuse me for calling him that. I did his biography and a book, and then that includes Wallenberg, but mainly Per Anker.
Yeah, and what they were doing, Elizabeth, was they were giving the Jewish people fake Swedish passports in order to get them out of the country.
Yeah, that started one night when they put the stars on the sleeves, indicating they were Jews. And a person who had worked with Per, he was, they were close, and he came to his door in the middle of the night, and he said, you have to help me. And at that point, Per told me, and I have all this on tape, Per said to me, I didn't know what to do. And so then he realized he could just give them a citizenship paper. And it was totally illegal. And this was a man, if you knew Per Anker, he wouldn't break, a parking law. And he just said, I have to do it. And then he said to me, and he probably wouldn't want to be quoted this way, but he said, I said, damn my job in Sweden, I've got to do it. And so he gave the man and his family these passes They were very simple pieces of paper.
And they saved thousands of people, didn't they?
Well, it started saving a large number, probably, I don't know how many, but probably no more than 100 or 150, 200. But then by that time, Wallenberg got into it. And Wallenberg knew the German mind pretty well. And so he started doing elaborations on these papers. And pretty soon it was called the Schutzpass. And it was quite a document. And that attracted the authenticity of it. And at that point, they did the thousands.
Uh-huh. When we come back from the break, let's talk a little more about Life on the Line. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.